Hi, everyone. Welcome back to The Mean Show. Today, I am very excited to introduce you to Andrea Chynoweth. I might be saying her name wrong. Darn it. I will say it correctly in the actual podcast, though. I'm just recording these intros separately from the actual interview, which is a mistake. And I will try to not do that again. That's why I'm wearing the same thing in all of the intros, and I'm wearing something different in the actual interviews. Anyway, Andrea is amazing. She was most recently the global creative director for Timbuk2, which you might remember as the messenger bag company. All of the in the 90s when I moved to San Francisco, all of the bike messengers carried Timbuk2 bags. I had one too. Because I rode my bike to work all the time. They're still like the coolest messenger bag. So Andrea was hired on at Timbuk2 as the product and creative team leader to, quote, infuse the brand with fresh energy and growth in order to successfully position the brand for sale. And that's exactly what she did because Timbuk2 was recently acquired. And so clearly she is a badass and knows her shit and is someone you want on your team. She's also just very lovely, really fashionable, kind, has some really fun stories to tell, especially about her. I was like laughing so hard. She got a job with Vivienne Westwood. That was like, I think her very first fashion job. And the way she got the job, I don't think it would, I don't think it would work today, but that's the beauty of like the times before the internet, before you applied for jobs on the web. You don't want to miss that story. It's amazing. Yeah. And we talk about a lot of other really fun stuff, including yoga, just dating at midlife, kids, and lots of other fun stuff. So without further ado, onto the show. I hope you enjoy my interview with Andrea Chynoweth. So I have with me today Andrea Chynoweth. Andrea, thank you so much for joining me today on The Mean Show.
I'm super excited. This is a brand new experience, which is something I love. So I'm super happy to be here.
Yay. So is this your first podcast?
It is.
Oh my gosh, I'm so honored to be your first podcast interviewer.
It's exciting.
It's very exciting. So Andrea and I met when you were at Timbuk2,
Yeah.
right? I was writing a story for Forbes, which I'll link to below. And I was so like impressed and just I felt your career was so interesting and impressive and I wanted to hear more and I'm so excited to have this opportunity to get to know you better. So I'd like to ask you just if you could talk about where are you now? I know you're not working right now. What is your sort of state of affairs in the world right now?
That's an excellent question. And I'm trying to get my finger on the very subject. I would say the headline for me right now is Girl in Transition. And it's a very interesting time for all of us. And like I mentioned to you offline, I don't think any of us know where we're going yet. So, as a person, as a professional, as a parent, that can be intimidating. But as a designer and a creative professional, that also can be very inspiring. So, I'm kind of living at the paradox of those kind of two things right now. Our team at Timbuk2, I was on the leadership team at Timbuk2 and I ran two departments there and reported into the CEO. We had a lot of strategic aspects to our role. Our team goal was in 5 years to build covetability into the brand to position it for sale. So we successfully positioned the brand for sale and met with a lot of potential investors. Eventually, a sale went through in the summer of 2019. Our
Wow, I didn't
leadership
even
team,
realize that.
yeah,
Oh,
our
wow,
leadership team
exciting.
was kept on for about 7 months to help with the transition, which was very interesting experience and pretty hairy. And at the end of it, February 27th, exactly 2 weeks before sheltering for COVID, we were all laid off together, including the CEO. And for me, this was very expected
Okay.
because the new ownership already had a leadership team for the company that they had, and they were adding a brand. And that would be the most cost effective choice to consolidate that way. So it was very interesting because as a woman, as a person, which professional is just a piece of who we are, I had been longing for a breather for about a year.
Mm,
I had been longing to live in my home, to be with my children, to not be running in and out with a suitcase, and to not be white knuckling it to my yoga class just to relax. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So it was very strange and very beautiful, wrapped in this cover of unpredictability and negative situations for so many people, especially medically. I strangely got what my heart had been longing for, which was a pause. And I had been running with my pants on fire for about 5 years at Timbuk2, 5.5 years. And so I was ready for a breather to just
mm.
recollect with myself as a person and with my kids. I have a son who's 15 and had his freshman year in high school in his bedroom,
Oh my
and a
God.
daughter who is 12 and going through all of those amazing and challenging changes as a girl, um, who just finished sixth grade in her bedroom. So it was really an incredible positive to get to be here and actually really be present for them. It had its challenges. I felt like a short order cook. The center of our little San Francisco apartment is this big, like, industrial kitchen island. And I literally spent a year and a third standing there. I swear, like, what is the next meal I'm going to come up with?
Oh
Oh my
my
God, the sink
God.
is filled with dishes again. And it was, just such a tremendous life change. As you know, we all
Oh
went
my
through it
God.
in our own different ways. So I think the interesting thing is the year plus really gave me time to reflect and reconnect with myself and kind of clarify themes around where I want my life to go. And we
Mhm.
don't always have that privilege. I am not like a lot of people in that a lot of people will move for jobs or build a life around a job. My professional life is super important to me. And my creative expression is super important to me, but it's a component of a complete and balanced life. So for me, it was really great to not need to jump from job to job and have the pause. It was really good. So
It
it
seems like
doesn't mean the year wasn't challenging, and it was, but
right.
it was really good for me. So, I was able to start, and I'm continuing to clarify where I want to go next.
It
So,
seems like amazing timing because obviously the year was very difficult for everyone.
yeah,
But it seems like it would have been so much more difficult if you were still having that intense
yeah,
career position. If you were trying to be a short order cook and be on Zoom calls for your
right.
job all day, that it just and also just since you were really desiring that pause for a creative person, that's so important to have that opportunity or take that opportunity every once in a while, it seems like. And that
Yes,
for me, that brought up a question for you about being I know that you're a creative person, you've designed, you went to school for fashion design, right?
yeah, yeah,
And but you're also a very experienced and skilled businesswoman. You've held executive positions, and so I'm curious how you work between those two sides of your brain, or is there a balance, or is there sort of a does it come together somehow? How do you think about that?
I think for me, it's just natural. So
Mhm.
I've been told by several people I've worked with, wow, you have a really unusual business sense for designer.
Hmm.
And for me, it isn't unusual. I have both sides to my brain, and I have an analytical, strategic, thoughtful, internalized side to me. And then I have this expressive, ebullient, outward side to me. So I think for me, those parts naturally come in balance. I think when it gets surprising is when I'm sitting in a leadership meeting and I might be the one asking about the numbers or pushing on the numbers and asking why it looks like this when it seems to me it should look like this. So,
Mm.
it's interesting, and it's some people will give me credibility and other people will question it. Oh, designers, you're supposed to be thinking about the length and the fabric. And, so,
Yeah.
but I think to be the full package, and if you look at designers who work for really high end, high profile brands, they really need to have both to be successful long term. I also have 2 bachelor's degrees. So I went to school first and got a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Illinois in Champaign, Illinois, because I'm from Chicago originally. And during that time, I studied in London at the London College of Fashion as a just let's see if this
Mm.
could be what I might want to do with my life. And then I realized it was. So after I finished that degree, I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, which is a phenomenal school. It's the first art school in the country and affiliated with the museum. And
Wow.
there I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts, which included fashion and screen printing and some other things. So I think, you know, I guess all along I've indulged both sides and developed both sides of myself. And I think as a creative in school, you're not necessarily offered those opportunities with that degree. So I'm thankful I had a lot of that background first.
Hmm.
I think a lot of other people maybe struggle being a creative and taking a higher role where the business end becomes increasingly important.
Yeah, and it's probably a credibility issue often, for people who are seen as creatives, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I struggle with that because but I don't have the natural gift that you have for the business end of things. I struggle with I just want to be creative all the time. I want to write, I want to create things. And then I'm like, "Oh, but I also need to make money." And that's the part of it that I struggle with. Um and I'm curious. So I know that you have also been an entrepreneur. It seems like your skills and your sort of natural talents are perfect for being an entrepreneur
But I
because
didn't love it
you didn't
that
love
much.
it. Oh,
No,
tell me more about that.
I didn't love it. I had my own clothing company, although it was earlier on in my career. It was in my very early days in San Francisco after I had left New York. I took a 1 year pause from fashion and worked in the restaurant business and then decided to put my own line together, which I developed and ran here for around 5 years.
Okay.
Um, but what I didn't love about it is one, how isolating the experience was. And I really realized at that time how much of a collaborative spirit I am. And I do believe what we create has the power to be so much more impactful when we do it together, which I believe is where we need to go as a humanity and a planet, really.
Mhm.
And I also found myself complaining about the endless paper trail of running your own
Mhm.
business. And I was doing everything at the time. I mean, I loved the creating my own line and showing it to stores and managing all of that, but collecting money and doing your own accounting, those things were a great experience, but they took a lot away, I think, from my creative process. So
Interesting.
I was also a lot less experienced then, though. Early
Mhm.
on in your career, you say, oh, you work for these other amazing people, and then you believe you see things that they're not seeing that you could potentially affect differently. But then you kind of learn the why of their ways once you do it yourself and once you have to pay for it yourself. It's
Right.
expensive. The fashion business, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you really need to come from a wealthy family or have someone willing to put a lot of money behind you because developing a collection and all of the styles and all of the raw materials and all of the fits to get everything right, it's a very involved process and it costs a lot if you're going to do it well. So it
So
was not
to get that launched and started to like make the collection, you have to have a significant amount of money. I mean, I guess you either have to be have a wealthy family or have an investor.
Yes. And I had
Yeah.
several relatives and close family friends that participated early on, but for
Mhm.
me, I do not come from a wealthy family, so it was fly or die. Like I needed to make it happen fast.
Yeah.
So, I think it was a great learning experience. The most wonderful part about it was how much I was able to grow and how much I was able to deliver joy to people. I
Uh-huh.
sold my line to a handful of stores in San Francisco, Chicago, New York. And then I started with a sales rep in New York who had secured me an opportunity with Saks Fifth Avenue. But at the time, I looked back and rewrote my business plan and I realized fiscally this was going to be insane and I still wasn't going to be able to hire anyone to help me.
Oh
So at
my
that time I
God.
decided, you know what? I'm ready to go back to work and
Mhm.
fill in a lot of these question mark blanks that I'm not understanding right now. And I can do it again if I ever want to. But this was a long time ago now because this was mid to late 90s. And I haven't gone back to doing my own line yet. I have thought about it,
Mhm.
but I almost feel I can create more impact working within a brand that potentially is partially established already and already has some reach, but to help them really clarify and make it stronger. I think
Mhm.
that's really where my sweet spot happens to be, or helping a brand to blow some dust off and really become, more vibrant and current. Um, but you never know. One thing I'm sure you know in life is as soon as you say you're never going to do something again, you find yourself doing it. So I don't say
Yes.
that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to go back to, like, where you're from. You said you're from Chicago,
Yeah.
and, were you always very enthusiastic about fashion? Was that something that you wanted to go into as a kid, or how did your interest evolve?
I didn't. So I'm not the girl that's like a lot of people that says, I used to make paper dolls and I dressed
Yeah.
my dolls, even though I sometimes made weird outfits for my stuffed animals. But um, no, I was always into self expression. So I was the
Mhm.
kid that was dressed really weird at school and I had my hair in funny little twists with ribbons and I was always cutting up my t shirts. But I didn't consider that a possible professional path. Um,
Mm.
and I really didn't know what I wanted to do until I was three-quarters of the way through with my first bachelor degree. So
And what was that degree, the first one?
Bachelor of Science was in human development and family studies. So, really
Oh.
understanding how people evolve and grow and change.
Oh, cool.
But at that time, when I was working through that degree, I actually thought I might want to be the first female broadcaster for the NFL. So,
Ooh.
yeah, but it was funny because I really underrated how important style and personal expression felt to me. So there was a certain point where the curiosity did come up, and that's when I applied to that program in London,
Mm.
and I had the blessing of being one of two Americans who got into their design program, and so I just went for it, and then I never looked back.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, it seems like the way you described your interest in self-expression, that is um like an artist's approach to becoming a fashion designer. I feel like I'm sure there's more than two, but there's the sort of fashionista who wants to follow trends and always be like spot on with hair, makeup, and everything. And there's kind of that side of fashion, but then there's the sort of more of the artist. And I feel like a lot of artists are become the directors of fashion brands that I'm in love with, like
Mhm.
the I don't know, like I don't know how to say her name, and Demolmeester, and
Demeulemeester.
Demeulemeester, sorry, thank you,
Yeah.
and like all those Danish design, are they Danish
They
designers
are
or
Belgian.
Belgian? Sorry,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm glad you're here to set me straight.
Well, we'll
But
see how well I do for a while. The
yeah.
question could get hard.
But anyway, I think that's interesting because um, it's I just love designers who have such original points of view and original takes on things instead of seeing the same thing over and over and over again. And I think that's something that was so amazing to me that you did with Timbuk2, was that you really took their brand and created these products for women. I mean, it's a for people who don't know the brand, it was originally a bike messenger brand, very very male centered, I would say,
Yep.
and kind of like masculine designs. And you took that and created pieces that were still on brand, but very fashion forward and a little bit feminine. And I thought that was so cool. Like, I know I've said this before, but that messenger, or not messenger, the fanny pack type bag that you
Yeah.
made with the fur lining, it looked sort of like, it was a little bit surprising that it was Timbuk2, but then when you found out it was Timbuk2, you were like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. But it's for someone who wants something a little bit more statement making and fashion forward.
And I
And
love that post that you did at Outside Lands in that bag. I put it in my portfolio.
oh really? Oh, that, I'm
That's so
honored.
great.
I love that bag. I still have it, and I'm kicking myself because I was going to grab it to show. I'll when I do my intro, I'll have it with me. um, yeah, I got rid of so much stuff before we moved, but that definitely came with me.
Oh,
That's a
that makes
lifer.
me
I'll
feel
keep.
so excited. I love
Yeah,
that.
I'll keep that one forever.
So
Yeah.
to me, creating excitement within brand is part of the strategic part that's very exciting, because it's not just about inspiration, although inspiration is a big part of it, but looking at this brand and saying, what is this brand about? What has it meant to people? Who hasn't it been talking to yet? What could that mean today if you like threw it in a Technicolor today wash cycle? What would it come out looking like? And so for me, that was a really exciting, fun opportunity. And I like risk taking. So for me to do something unexpected, it like takes my breath away and I get super excited about that instead of just doing something that's going to deliver the numbers. And what ends up happening is when you put excitement in a brand, the numbers come, but you do it with
Mhm.
more integrity and more originality. Um, yeah. So it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. By the way, I also really enjoy the numbers side
Yeah.
and strategizing how to achieve the necessary volume, which yes, can mean more bottom line, but it also can mean you're reaching more people and them feeling your relevance. So I do enjoy that side as well. But for me, creating newness and surprising people about who you are as a brand creates
Mhm.
longevity and creates that deep connection. And that's about personal expression. So
Yeah, yeah. At the same time, I would imagine it's if you're doing something like that, it's a risk, or it can be seen as a risk because it's not really been done before, maybe. So is it difficult, is it difficult to sometimes to convince the other executives or who are the other decision makers
oh
that
yes.
it's the way to go? Yeah.
It is. And I think if you're going to create product like that, you better have a sense of humor, because it is going to be hard. And you also do need to have the right kind of communication and persuasion skills
Mm.
to help people who are more, concerned about risk to come along with you.
Mhm.
So
That's so interesting. Are there any tips you could give, or how is that a skill that you've developed over your career? And are there any like tips or examples that you could give us where you were able to convince someone to take a risk?
I think the main thing is to be a really good listener, to hear where concern lies. And this is not just in a professional environment, this could be in any relationship too, right?
Mhm.
So to be a really good listener, hear where the concern is, address it head on, and then to explain the why you're doing what you're doing. And, hopefully you've been hired by people who trust you to do this job. And it's just a matter of a dialogue to get you there. And a
Mhm.
designer doesn't win every time. I mean, that's for sure. There are many times, that you don't get one through that you really felt was a good idea. But I just think really being measured in your communication and over time through successes built on risks to remind people that you're leveraging that same skill set and that same risk you took the last time that it paid off. And that's
Right.
really important.
Build on
But
that.
you never know. It's
Yeah.
not a perfect process. It's a
Yeah.
crapshoot. And you do your best. You're just a person coming up with ideas and
Yeah.
hoping when you throw them all that a few of them stick really well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I know that you mentioned in our previous interview that you worked with Vivienne Westwood, and I'd love to hear some more about your early fashion experiences.
So when I, so as I had mentioned, I'd studied in London when I was working on my first degree. A year later, I finished it. Then I finished my whole second degree at the Art Institute. And the whole time I was planning to move back to London, the whole time.
Mm,
Because for me, that really clicked in my spirit. I still wonder if I might not have one more of those experiences in me.
yeah.
Um, so as soon as I finished school, I moved to London. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything. And I mentioned to you before, I've never moved for a job. I moved to continue that experience and that connection I was having with myself creatively in that environment. So I moved out there. I was living in a flat with a friend who came with me, and I just started sending out resumes. At the time, I was hoping to work with John Galliano. He was very young, brand new, and starting
Mm,
to get interesting attention. And so I thought, oh, he would be someone good to try. And I was sending out resumes to other people. But then I thought, Vivienne's the long shot. I'm going to go for it because so many people wouldn't send it. And my resume was crazy. It was a hand drawn psychedelic rock poster that was my resume. And when they would receive it and pull it out of the giant magenta envelope, feathers would fall everywhere. And so
oh my god.
Which, which unfortunately today, when you're sending in resumes to websites that look for keywords and don't even see the
Ugh,
font you picked, it's a whole nother realm.
I
Um,
know.
but literally a few days after I sent it, I got a call from them. Hi, we're getting ready for a runway show in Paris. It's in a few weeks. We're looking for extra help. Are you interested in coming in? And I'm like, oh yeah,
Oh
I'm really
wow.
interested in coming in. And it was literally like showing up, getting handed paper patterns and piles of fabric, start cutting. We're making all of our garments for the
Mm,
show, start cutting. And it was really interesting because I was inexperienced. I was an art school student. Like
yeah.
there was very little practicality in what we were creating. It was all fantasy. And
Right.
they handed us this stuff. And in a lot of cases, for example, in one of my early days, they handed me a huge panel, which was like a screen print of a Baroque painting, a real painting that was on white denim. And they handed me the jean pattern. They're like, go ahead. I said, well, where do you want the different parts of the painting to land? They're like, you decide. So
Oh
I could
wow.
put the little angels kissing on the butt or on the
Yeah.
cross or wherever I wanted. And it was so amazing to be trusted to that level with my own creativity that was still very underdeveloped and wild. So
Yeah.
it was an
Wow.
extremely spontaneous environment. We were a day and a half. We all got brought to Paris to do the shows, which was amazing. A day and a half before my first show, Vivienne didn't like the show closer, the grand finale, this massive
Oh.
shredded tulle wedding dress, huge. And so she had us run to the convenience store. It was late at night on a little mini 2 burner stove. We boiled up pots of dye and she started just dipping it in the dye. And then we ran out to the parking lot and she was spinning in circles to get all the liquid out of it. And then we just hung it up to dry and that ended up walking the runway.
Oh my god,
So
what year was that?
I'm terrible with dates, but I want to say it was 1992. So I believe it was the spring 93 show, possibly either spring or
Okay.
fall. So, yeah, it
It'd
was
be cool to see that
crazy.
dress.
Yeah, I'm really bad with dates and distances. So whenever anyone
Me
asks me,
too.
like, how far was it? Was like, and I'll be like, I have no idea.
Maybe 5 miles, maybe a half a mile. I
But I
don't
know I know where the sleeve hit.
know.
If it
Right.
was above the wrist bone or
What's
but anyway, it
important.
was really spontaneous and it was crazy because then we got asked to go and like in a matter of days we were flying to Paris with
Wow.
Vivienne and her then brand new assistant who has been her partner, Andreas Kronthaler, and designs the line with her today. He was a student
Wow.
of hers from a teaching program she did in Austria. And
Wow.
we were all in a van together from the airport driving into Paris with our feet up on the dashboard. And it was just crazy because I was a kid, and it
Yeah.
was just such an amazing experience. I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing. Like, and the piece of advice I would give, which has nothing to do with the piece of advice I gave before, right? Because you didn't
Okay.
ask for this one. But the piece of advice I would give is I have found in life so many people will step to the side and let you walk right down the middle because they're too afraid to try or perceive barriers that may or may not even be there. And I think just sending that one envelope really changed the course of my career because in those early years, how you feel about yourself as a creative and as an American overseas too, which at that time was a very different experience than it is now. Um, it was great to not overthink it and just be courageous and go for it. And so that's the advice I would give to people. Don't overthink it. Because as soon as you put the process up here, you may decide not to do it. And doing it is where the fun is and where the challenge is. That's how we grow. So I guess that would best describe that experience. And I was there for about a year and a quarter. I overstayed my working visas for quite a while because the visas I had since I went over without a job were considered student visas. If
Hmm.
you were within, I found this loophole. If you were within 6 months of graduating college, you could go over and legally work for a certain period of time. So that's what I did. So I was able to legally work. And then I overstayed the visa for a while and I eventually came back because I wanted to remain open to the idea that I could go again someday. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
yeah.
Wow. And that's really good advice. And that doesn't end after you're not a super young person anymore. That's because I think for people and maybe especially women at midlife, I think that we sort of um maybe I should speak for myself, but that like maybe my risk taking is behind me. Like maybe it's time to be sort of like more appear more stable, or I don't know, like to not be wild. But that is overthinking it. And I know that that's bad advice to myself, but sometimes that's what's going on in my brain.
Well, it just sounds like a self observation. And I find this phase of life to be really complex and
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah.
And, in myself, that wild risk taker is still alive. But then there's this other more practical being that is raising kids and financially responsible for our life in a very expensive city. And then you also bring with you all of the experiences you've had. And some of them elevate you, but some of them don't. So, and then layer on the aging process and a year and a third with too much time to peek in the mirror at everything that's
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah.
So I think you could speak for all of us, or at least
Okay.
for me.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm glad I'm not alone. Yeah. Speaking of that, have you followed Justine Bateman and what she's been doing on social
Well, I know
media?
a
And
little bit about it, but I don't know a lot about it.
yeah,
But I like the tone of what she's doing.
yeah, it's amazing. I mean, she wrote a book called Face,
Mhm.
and she wrote it in response to Googling herself, and the fill in, Google's fill in when you would type in Justine Bateman was Justine Bateman looks old or looks so old now. And so that's what she was finding. And so she said at first she freaked out and was like, what can I do to make my face not look terrible anymore? But then she was like, hold on a second. And she decided to kind of dig into it and try to figure out why, like, what's so terrible about your face aging? Like, what is really the fear behind that? What am I afraid of? And apparently she did like counseling and really dug into it. And she decided there's nothing wrong with my face. There's nothing wrong with anybody's face. And so that's been her, like sort of message on social media and publishing this book. And I mean, plus she's like making films and doing all kinds of other amazing things. But when I saw that, I was really floored because I mean, I don't know. I just am constantly like looking at my face and being like, "Oh my god, my neck and what is happening and how do I make
Yep.
it stop?" And and but then to just take a step back and be like, "Well, why do I have to be so concerned about that?" I mean, obviously, society and every all the input we get tells us there's like something wrong with your face if it's aging. But like to find the sort of ability to step back and reject all that, it's I am very impressed by her being able to do that, and I'm trying to also do that myself, and I can do it for like a minute, but then I catch like an angle and I'm like, "What's" so it's like a process. It's not like a switch that you can flip, but I'm curious what your experience has been like in that department.
Well, I guess I find it. Here's the thing. Inside me, I'm an overgrown teenager. I am. Like my spirit is teenager spirit. My kids say they joke every year, "Oh mom, you've just turned 36 again," and I'm 53.
Oh, me too, we're the same.
Oh, yay,
Yeah.
awesome. So, and I go to lots of music festivals and I like to go out and I have friends of all different ages that range from late 20s to 70s. So, and
I
I'm
love
just a
that.
very young spirit. When I became a parent, I wasn't thinking about a picket fence at all. You know what I mean? And so sometimes I just feel shocked when I see myself in the mirror going, oh my God, that's not who I'm like thinking. That's not what I'm thinking I'm wearing. Like,
Yeah,
that's not the skin I think I'm wearing. And I'm not talking about
yeah.
skin. I just mean like that whole layer of being. And for me, it doesn't stop with the face. It goes all the way down. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
it's, it's amazing how everything has changed. And then it's also an internal journey because people see me and they're like, oh my God, you look amazing. But how it feels to see myself and be myself doesn't always feel that way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I find it a very interesting next stage. And when I was a kid, I said I was going to live to be 139, and
Oh
I'm
my god.
sticking with that story. So I'm going to have to get really comfortable with where I am now because it's going to change a lot more between
Yes,
now and then. You know what I mean?
exactly,
But I
exactly.
think, I think I always, when I was younger, looked at Lauren Hutton and thought she was the most gorgeous woman not because of how she looked, because of how happy she looked in
Mm,
self acceptance. And
yes.
so she's my inspiration, I would say, in that way. And there are a lot of other women who have gone that path. And it's interesting because when I see famous people whose faces you're extremely familiar with, and suddenly they've done something, and I always go, oh no, when I see it. And by the same token, I respect that people make their own self expression choices, but I have to just remind myself that I actually loved looking at these people, how they looked as themselves, not how they looked trying to replicate a version of themselves. So, you know, I definitely have a lot of feelings about it, especially because I'm single and what it's like to date in your 50s and reveal yourself
Yeah,
In your
right.
50s to people who didn't know you before, that's a very humbling experience and
Uh,
also requires a sense of humor.
right, right.
So
Yeah, and I'm I don't know how down that path we wanna go, but I'm just I mean, I'm assuming you date men who are a similar age to you typically, so maybe there's a mutual sense of humor that can go on there?
that's a poor assumption, but good job. I I would say one of my growth challenges is I tend to be attracted because of my personality to guys that are younger than me. And what I
Yeah.
found more recently is how much more self-conscious that's starting to make me
Mhm.
because they can be looking at girls their own age and what
Yeah.
that looks like and then where, we are in our lives. So I'm intrigued by the idea of starting to date guys my age or maybe even a little older and just see what that feels like.
Yeah.
It's a foreign experience to me. So, I mean, even my ex-husband was 4 years younger than me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm married, but once in a I'm not that I think about not being married, but I wonder what it would be like to, be in the dating world at this age because I look at other men my age and I'm like, I I just can't imagine it. Like, I mean, my husband is my age, so it's just I don't know. I think similar to you, I feel like a bit of a teenager inside in a lot of ways. So when I look at older men, my brain doesn't think they're the same age as me, even though they totally are. It's
Right.
like a weird
Me too.
thing that goes on in your brain. But I'll also say that something that Justine Bateman said that I really appreciated was that she said that if she goes in to direct a film or produce a film, I think she directs maybe and produces, and she shows up looking like she does, people are like, "Oh, you know what you're doing." Like your experience, you can see her experience like kind of on her face. But if like a 20 something walks in and tries to do that, people might be like, does she know what she's doing? Like,
Right.
can we trust her decisions? Stuff like that. So I think that's something that's reassuring about getting older is that you do kind of, you walk around with your experience and your knowledge and everything that you've learned over your career and your life. And, we should be proud to show that on our faces. It's just society makes it not very easy
Yeah.
to do that.
It's true. And it's amazing no matter how strong you are at the core as a person, it
Yeah.
does have impact. What you see on the outside does have impact. And it's been a part of who we are since we were born.
Yeah.
And thank God I'm not of the age to have grown up with social media and all of that because
Yeah.
that's just a whole nother crazy set of influences. But we most definitely grew up through the lens of the male gaze. And
Yeah.
so I catch myself sometimes thinking what I think a guy will think instead of what I think. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And how you look at yourself or how you present yourself. And so I'm working my butt off to get rid of that.
Mhm. Yeah, me
The
too.
male gaze, you know what I mean? And it's
Absolutely.
interesting raising a boy and a girl
I bet.
because I think, for obviously decades and decades, there's been a tremendous focus around the liberation of women and around female empowerment, which is very important to me. But I also think male empowerment through a new lens may
Yes.
even be more powerful in cutting men and women and everyone in between free of these kind of roles we're stuck in, you
Oh
know?
my god, I
And
agree with
so
that so much. Yes.
so, in how I talk to my kids, I talk to them on their own, but I talk to them together too, a lot about this, kind of presenting all of the angles. And I think it's a huge responsibility raising a boy today. So,
I totally agree. Yeah, and I actually just, recorded podcast with the first man that I'm going to
Yay!
have on the show, and it was because of that idea that I mean, women can't make changes in a vacuum. Like, we need men on board because currently they have more power and they're making more decisions, and the trouble that we have with certain things in society kind of stems from men, you know, and our acceptance of what's happening sometimes. But I felt like he's a man who I knew him way back. We worked together at Wired, but he has during COVID, he decided he has his own podcast as well. He's a writer, and he decided to feature female writers who were planning on um, publishing books, and now they could no longer do their book tour, they could no longer promote their book. So he
Mhm.
decided to feature all female writers who were in this kind of difficult position, and I was like, that's amazing that you're doing that, thank you for doing
Thank
that. So I wanted to
you.
have him on, and he's gone through a lot of changes himself and the way he thinks about things, and so I thought that was interesting and important to, to feature a man.
I love that. I wanna listen to that one. I
Yeah.
haven't
Well, we
yet.
ended up talking for 2 hours, so I still have to edit it down to a manageable,
It's great.
length. But, yeah. Well, so I'm so in awe of your career, and, I'm just wondering if you has anyone else given you advice that you have carried with you throughout your career? Or if not, is there something that that you remind yourself of consistently as you go through your career?
I think it's an interesting question. I can't specifically say something that someone said, but the people who have supported me have given me that spark for myself that I've written out all of these years. So, and there are lots of people that support you a little, but there are only a few people that end up supporting you a lot and believing in you, even when you may not yourself at times or you go in and out. And so, what I would say to people, especially in our age group, who probably are managing, mentoring, and inspiring people, which is something really important to me in my professional life, is to really stretch yourself beyond maybe what you feel like giving to support other people's growth so that they can believe in it themselves, because this goes beyond their professional success and path. This is what it means to have a planet of kindness, and that
Mhm.
planet will be really different little by little than the one we live on now. And so, really being there for people professionally. And what I find is when I'm a manager and a mentor, you actually end up there for them personally more than professionally, truthfully,
Mm.
because a person shows up every day to their desk, not a, not just a professional. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, um, and I would say I had an absolutely incredible fashion teacher who just inspired the heck out of me. And his name was Joe Brown. He passed away from AIDS so many years ago, decades ago.
Mm.
But when I got the job at Vivienne, he was the first person I called, because he really believed in me at the beginning when I didn't even know if I had any talent at all.
Mm.
So I guess that would be for me the answer. It's not about something someone said, but it's how someone made me feel at key stage gates that really made a difference.
That's so important. Yeah, and and that's an important message for women our age to remember to help the younger generation. And this is something that I'm wondering if for you, is that something that you were taught by your family or your mother, or because it wasn't really like a natural thing. Like, my mom was a single mom until
Me
I was
too.
8. And she was kind of like, I got a lot of shit going on. I'm a nurse. I am taking care of my kid. And she was kind of like focused on like survival and take care of yourself. like, don't give people your lunch, don't like share, like she was kind of like, take care of yourself, make sure you're taken care of. And so I've had to learn that part about being more generous and um, mentoring and helping other people and being like a little bit more open. So I'm wondering if how that developed for you.
I think our paths have similarities, and my mom was a single mom also. My dad was a consistent part of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
I think my dad showed me more about professional path and helping others. The business he was in, he had a lot of people who had economic challenges, um, and he often would help them come along when he could have kind of called things on them. And so I really saw that kind of compassion and um, when you see like the mother duck and then all the little ducklings, and then there's the one that's trying to catch up at the back. I saw my dad kind of always pulling that last little duckling along, whoever
Aw.
they were professionally, and he ran his own company. Um, I think my mom was more similar to your mom in that, we do care for each other, but we take care of our own.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I would say when I arrived out in San Francisco in 95, and I came here after living in New York, um, I was a really different person. I wasn't like that. I was more tough and hard and risk taking and wild.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely had a Chicago way of talking and some New York attitude and potentially some self protection too in that from all the places I had been living all by myself and trying to make my way. So I would say in New York, I started practicing yoga to deal with the stress and insanity of that city in 94. And I think that practice really helped me along my way to see things differently. Like
Mm.
about it's about putting other people first and helping people reach their own greatness, and how important that is and how much it will mean to them. So,
Mm. Interesting. So
yeah.
yoga. And you
Yeah.
still are a practitioner.
I am. I think
Yeah.
26 or 26 years now. Yeah.
Oh wow. That's great.
Oh, I am telling you, no matter what the situation is, but let's take the last year. It has saved my life
Oh
over and
wow.
over and over and over. It is shocking to me how I could be feeling on a given morning, and I could be feeling great, but I could be feeling rough, like as a person, like, oh, today my mind is not feeling great. I'm feeling just like, I don't know if I can deal with the day's challenges, whatever they are. And there's many. Um, and then I'll practice yoga and I'm totally reconfigured, like completely
Wow.
reconfigured. Like, okay, I can slow things down. I feel gentle with myself. I can go out and be gentle with the world, and then you take it from there. So I think it's the most profound practice and art form. So
Wow.
it means a lot to me. I'm not by any means like a yoga fanatic, but it is an important piece of
Hmm.
who I am for sure.
And do you practice at home? Have you been practicing at home since COVID?
Yeah, I've had a home practice for many years, and my incredible teacher, Manu Somanos, who is one of the top two instructors accredited by BKS Iyengar himself
Mm. Oh wow.
globally. He he taught online the whole year this last year, and I adore him, but I never wanted to bring a screen into my yoga
Mm.
practice because for me, that's like the one time that whole outside world is not
Right.
invited. So, from having my own home practice and going to classes for many years, this year I went on my own personal exploration and I said, you know what? I'm not taking any classes until this is over. I'm just going to trust my own gut instincts and explore
Wow.
and see what happens. And it was great. And
Wow.
recently, when things opened back up, my brother and I attended a 7-day intensive at our
Wow.
amazing studio, the Abode of Yoga. And we had a 7 straight day intensive of yoga and pranayama breath practice and
Wow.
inspirational conversation. And it was so amazing to rejoin within that community physically whole, and experience that again, taking with me my own journey. And, this is like life. Sometimes we all do things together, and then sometimes we have to go out on our own little path and see where it
Mhm.
leads us. And then we join back on the road somewhere up ahead.
That's so
So,
true.
yeah, but it's a really important part of my life. And I would say on a cellular level, it has really made me a healthier person in my
Mm,
body, in my mind, in my spirit, in my actions, you know.
wow. And do you just like set a timer and or are you just plan to do it for a certain amount of time at your home? And I'm
Um,
wanting to like replicate what you're doing.
well, do you practice yoga?
I do, but it's been very intermittent during COVID because I was doing like a screen or like a digital class, and actually I love my teacher, and I didn't really mind doing it with her on the screen, but it just was hard for me to keep it up. I didn't really have a good space to do it in my old house, and yeah, so
So a couple comments about that. So my teacher Manuso many years ago, and I've been going to him for, I think, I don't know, 17 years, a long time. But
yeah.
anyway, he once said to everybody, this class is not your practice. This is where you come to learn. And maybe I can show you some different ways or sequencing that I might approach a certain situation on a given day. But these are really just tools for you to take and explore what this practice is for you. And I guess for me, because I'm a creative professional and by nature, I love the personal exploration, but it's wildly intimidating to start a home practice because
Yeah.
just like a career, you don't know what you're doing when you
Yeah.
start. You have no idea. So, what I said to myself when I started, you do need to be able to clear a space somewhere. In my
Yeah.
apartment I'm in right now, it involves lugging a chair and an ottoman across the room, rolling the rug back, getting on a step stool, and moving a framed picture over, like really reconfiguring my living room
Wow.
to clear the space, sweeping it and getting it all ready. But when I first started practicing on my own, I said, you know what? I'm dying to have a home practice. I don't know what I'm doing, and I just want to try it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in a room and I'm going to do 3 poses. Any 3 poses I can think of. Any. And so that was like, okay, that's an achievable goal. I'm not going to put pressure on
Mm.
myself. So I went in a room in my old place. I did a pose and then I thought of another one. So I did another pose and then I thought of a third pose. And then I actually thought of 2 more that we had done at class during the week. And that was it. That was my first yoga practice. And then I said, oh my God, I did it. And
Wow.
so then, maybe a week later, I said, okay, I'm going to try it again. And I just, rather than aim for perfection, and we often do this in life too, with something like that, just throw yourself into it and enjoy the experience. Bring your sense of humor and your humility and just do 3 poses. You can do
Yeah.
3 poses if you take classes. And the home practice for me is such an incredible experience. Sometimes it's a struggle and it's really hard to find my way and my body doesn't feel good and everything's tight and whatever. And then other times I can't believe where I've wound up in the order of things that got me there. And I'm like, that was really wild and creative
Oh,
and fun.
interesting.
Yeah. So I encourage
Cool.
you have more tools in yourself than you think. And a teacher is just to provide you more. So if you
Yeah.
try a little bit and then you take another class, you'll be like, ooh, I could add this one next time. And
That's
just have low
mhm.
expectations. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's really good advice, and that's actually what my teacher Winnie always said is that this is I'm giving you tools to take with you. Like she always encouraged us to have a home practice as well.
Yeah.
So that's a really good way to approach it. Just like some poses that just like low expectations of yourself, and I'm going to do it. Like you've motivated me.
I'm so glad. And it's kind of like, then you're there and you're like, oh my God, this is kind of really fun. And suddenly
Yeah.
I'm doing my own yoga practice. Like, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be anything. And no, I don't set a timer or anything. There are a lot of
Okay.
people who set timers for holds, like if they want to
Mhm.
hold each pose for a minute. I do sometimes set timers for long hold poses because
Mhm.
maybe I want to see, maybe I'm trying to build up how long I can be in a headstand. And
Mhm.
so I may set a timer and see if I can get to the 10 minutes or the 8 minutes. And sometimes I can and sometimes I can't, but I don't push it over that because yoga is really about connecting with yourself on a deep level and
Yeah.
seeing and feeling what's really there. So I really encourage you to do it. I think you'd
Thank
really enjoy
you.
to go like to try it on your own, especially because you're such an independent person.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, that thank you. I'm going to do it. Um so I wanted to sort of wrap up on a fun note.
Cool.
And so I know obviously fashion is your career and you've seen a lot of trends come and go. And I'm curious if you have any favorite trends from the past or ones that you absolutely hated.
Oh, that is so funny. I mean, it's funny too because as a designer, I love both trend and total disconnection from trend,
Mhm.
just like your own gut instinct in the moment.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Trends, I loved the 80s. We grew up in the 80s. I
Yes.
was in high school the first half of the 80s and college the second half of the 80s. I still am a skinny jean lover, except unlike a lot of people who stopped for 20 or 30 years in between, I love them all the way through. So that
Oh,
was like a
wow.
trend from the 80s. Like, I love a skinny jean with like a creeper or a big chunky shoe. And that's something I took from back then. And for me, that initial trend became kind of a lifetime self-expression.
Mhm.
Pop colors, high vibration colors from the 80s. Like, I love that so much. What other trends? And then for me, really one piece of nearly every outfit is denim, always. And that started in the 70s when the Gap opened their first
Oh my god,
jean
yeah.
shops. And in the suburbs of Chicago, I remember going to that store with my mom, and it was so cool because they were playing loud rock and roll and they had all this denim piled up to the ceiling. And I like found myself in those stacks of denim. And much later in my career, I designed the women's business for Levi's for 8.5 years.
That's right.
And so that strong trend in denim in the 70s followed me also throughout my whole life. Um,
And Levi's didn't the Gap used to sell Levi's
the
at
Gap
the
used to sell
beginning,
Levi's. Yeah.
but
They
then they were like, "Wait, we're gonna sell our own jeans."
Yeah, eventually they became a manufacturer instead of a retailer only. Trends that I don't like involve women looking overexposed and cheap. I really, because for me that puts us steps backwards all the time.
Mhm.
There is nothing wrong with showing your skin. I look very covered up today, but I'm often like in just like a little tank top, you know. And there's nothing wrong with being proud of your body and showing your body, but the trends that are trashy on women, that really bothers me because I feel like they have the opportunity to look a lot more powerful and smart than
Mhm.
just physical and revealed, I guess. So, but that's more deep than it is a fun answer. You know what
No,
I mean?
no, that's it. It's great though, and I'm glad you brought that up actually because I struggle with that because my daughter is 9 and since your daughter's 12, it's even more intense probably, but we had to turn off the videos on the Apple Music. I didn't realize that she could just watch all these videos and I didn't realize how like risque the videos were. I was like, "Oh my god, what are you
Oh yeah,
watching like the rap videos like the twerking and it's like basically simulated sex." It's like I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, I didn't know you were watching but, but I struggle with the, with the outfits that some of the women wear, like the women performers. And because on the one hand, wear what you want. Like, if that makes you feel empowered, if that makes you feel good, if that makes you feel sexy, if that makes you feel the way you want to feel, then power to you, you know? But then on the other hand, there is that male gaze that we're talking that, you know, it can deliver a message that maybe you don't want to be delivering. Like if my daughter decided to emulate that kind of a look, and then I'm like so scared of navigating that. You're probably already navigating it.
I mean, thank God. And I mean, definitely the tops are getting shorter and
Yeah.
littler. Like we're in that right now where the midriff is showing, and that's a trend right now. And I'm totally cool with that. Cute little
Uh-huh.
stomach, no problem.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny because in San Francisco, what I see in my daughter and her friends, and also my niece who's 15, they're much more normcore. They're dressing much more
Oh, I love
genderless.
that.
Not
Okay.
completely genderless, because sometimes, they'll have a little tiny top on or whatever, but they're wearing huge jeans and big over sweaters and sweatshirts. And it's through the lens we grew up with, it's genderless,
Uh-huh.
nearly genderless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, it may be different other places, but I would say in big city environments where the definition of gender is really at the forefront and how that's evolving, they don't necessarily want to affiliate at all. They want to show their power as a person, not their
Mhm.
power as um, what their gender or sex is.
Oh,
So
I love
it's
that.
really interesting, and I love it. And I've been looking at several Bay Area brands I might be interested in working in next, and thinking, wow, it's just so interesting to me. Like everyone on their website, they have on their e-commerce site, they have women and they have men. And it's like, okay, well, I guess in, the Chicago suburbs, there might be a lot of people that affiliate with one of those. But the young people I see today, they don't affiliate with that at all. They don't even know what that means. It's like archaic to them. So,
I love that.
it's interesting, the idea of expressing gender in very different ways than it has been before. And I love it for women and I love it for men. I mean, that's a trend with men right now. I'm
Yeah.
wild for. What
Yeah.
magazine was it last year that Pharrell was on the cover of? Now I'm forgetting which magazine was, and it's in the other room where it was,
Oh,
and he was in a huge yellow dress on the cover, and
was
I
that Pharrell?
loved it
Yeah.
so much. I read it cover to cover, and I love that guys are freeing themselves up. My brother always has a sparkly manicure and pedicure,
Really?
and he's a
That's
grown
so
man.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Harry Styles with his feather boas, and then there's the female singer. Oh, her name is I'm blanking, but she wears the green. Uh,
Billie Eilish.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
you're
she wears very like oversized clothing, and but still is like so super stylish, and like making her own trends.
she
Basically,
really
I just
is setting the trends
yeah.
for the young women now. And what I see is it really comes from men's streetwear. I mean, that's the trend.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
urban men's being women taking it on themselves and saying, you know what, we can be that too. We can be that tough and strong, and we don't have to show our body parts to get credibility. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
interesting.
I love that. Okay, I know I said that that was my last question, but do you have time for one more quick
Yeah, I
thing that
do. I
okay,
do.
I know we're like past an hour at this
It's
point.
okay. I'm not
Um,
picky like that.
okay. But yeah, that's something else I'd love to ask you about is there does seem to be a lot more brands who are showing, different sized models, transgender models, clothing that is kind of genderless. And I mean, do you think that's the future of fashion? And are you interested in maybe working with a brand like that?
Absolutely. And I think it's the now of fashion. I
Yeah.
don't even think it's the future. Who knows where we're going in the future? But this phase we are in right now, everybody who is not taken seriously, who is underserved in any way, is asking for that appropriate attention and leveling now. And it's happening from a gender perspective, it's happening from a racial perspective. I find it, obviously, I have a lot of empathy with the pain that brings people to that place, but I have so much hope for the future at the collective courage that's going on right now to push onto the next place. And so, in terms of style, I love it. Yes, I would love to work for a brand like that, or I'd love to help a brand go there.
Yeah, that
Who isn't
you
there
would be
yet?
so good at that.
It would be so much fun. And it's funny. Sometimes I look like a grown up woman. Sometimes I look like a teenager. Sometimes I look like a high school skater boy. And it's really fun. I find it really fun to explore those different parts of our personality through the expression of dress. So, yeah, I encourage it totally. And I think the only place where there's challenge is fit, because when there are styles that are fitted, the body
Mhm.
types and parts and placement of the volume and hollows are very different. So that's the only place where, there could be the need for two shapes or two fits or whatever.
Right.
And in terms of female body types and body positivity, that's very exciting to me. And it's very interesting to hear my 12-year-old talk about how important that is for her. When she
Oh,
hears adults say things like, oh, she's the heavier girl, or she's the one, she will look and say, I can't believe you just said something like that. Like, they won't
mhm.
even say it because it means it's not even a defining characteristic of somebody to them. So, and there are a handful of brands that, well, actually, more than a handful, a lot of brands are showing a lot more body types and body positivity. For
Yeah.
example, Skims. It's really interesting, to look and say, wow, everyone can see themselves here. Everyone
Mhm.
can see their shape, their fit, their color. I love that. I think that's so cool. And it's interesting because when I look at sites like that, I get to the skinny girls who represent more the kind of traditional model that we've all been uh, influenced by.
Yeah.
And they, to me, don't look as good as the other girls in a way, because there's
Mm,
something so alluring about what you haven't been looking at the whole time and been messaged about the whole time. So,
yeah, it's so fresh to see the different body types that yeah, like I really just wanna see that. I don't
yeah,
wanna see the typical model anymore as much.
yeah. And then, Gucci, for example, if you look at their shows and you look at their looks, the gender is so new and blurry, and they're shooting for their catalogs, men in dresses, and
Yeah.
just and lipstick, and I just I think the time needs to go by where only certain people are allowed to have certain kinds of experiences, whatever
Yeah.
they are. And we have a long way to go, because we live in a bubble out here where
Yeah.
we are along with those other places that are ahead of the curve. But you go other places and there's a long way to go. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So,
Yeah.
but it gives me hope. And I love raising kids in this environment where they don't have the filters we had at all. They don't,
Yeah. They're
they don't
lucky.
even get it. So,
They're lucky. I just wrote a post recently because I was down in Orange County watching like regular TV, which we never watch, but we were at
yeah,
my mother-in-law's and she has like regular TV with commercials, and my daughter's kind of like, why do we have to watch this not interesting section of video? But Jennifer Garner came on doing like a Neutrogena anti-aging commercial. And she was like, "What have wrinkles ever done for you?" Or like something about wrinkles and like make them disappear and something like, and my daughter perked up and she was like, "Why don't you like your face, lady? What's wrong with your face?" And I was just like, I was so happy she had that response. I was like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with her face. There's nothing wrong with wrinkles. Like, there's nothing wrong with getting older because we all do it. It happens to all of us. So, yeah, I feel like the new generation is growing up with a different way of looking at the world, and I'm grateful for it.
Which is a positive of the change of the times, but also even part of social media, really, because they're being shown a greater breadth of ideas around
Mm-hmm.
things. And, it's interesting. Sometimes I see kids get dressed now and they will show what we perceive to be body flaws without even thinking about it. Like, oh, if I have pudge sticking out here, like I'm going to wear a higher waist jean and like tuck
Yeah,
it in, but they will leave it showing. And it's just interesting to me because I feel like we grew up so much more self-conscious than they are.
totally.
And
Totally.
that's not healthy. And it's very hard to undo.
It's very hard because I mean, it's been good 40 years and it's it's I still can't undo it. I'm trying. But
Totally.
oh gosh. Andrea, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. This has been so much fun and so
Oh, yes.
interesting.
I know. I've enjoyed it too. Hopefully, we could take it offline with a couple cocktails sometime
I would
soon.
love that. I would love that. And I'm so excited to see what you do next. Keep me posted.
Yeah, I just want to mention to you, can I give one little
Please.
extra thing, which
Yeah.
is I think an exciting thing about this phase of our life to me, which also is reflective of where I want to go on my professional path, is it's fine. We have all of this experience and supposed expertise, which I don't find that exciting anyway. I find being a student and not knowing more exciting.
Mhm.
But I think the opportunity we have right now, where our world is right now, and the issues we have around sustainability, around kind treatment to all beings, humans, animals, living things, around racial equality and gender equality, I think we have the opportunity, and I'm looking for the opportunity to tie myself to a brand where I can leverage the expertise I have to do my little tiny piece in helping create positive change in the world we have. And so I think this is a really important part about getting to this point in our careers is we now have something that we can use to give back more than just making new ideas and making more stuff. You know what I mean? We
Mhm.
can actually help together to move the needle for women's empowerment, move the needle for how healthy our planet is, whatever it is, and leverage what we already know how to do really well. And so that's where I'm going. And that's what I would really want to inspire people to do.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for saying
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's so important. Yeah, and I love what you said about it's exciting to be a student because sometimes I feel like I'm at this age, I'm 53, I should know so much more. I should be so much more experienced, but so I was really happy to hear you say that. Because it is fun to be a student and I'm still learning. I'm always learning.
Yeah, definitely. And
So,
that's where the fun is when you don't know what's going to happen,
yes.
you know.
Yes.
So
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you again so much.
thank you. I really
Okay.
appreciate the opportunity. It was so fun. And this was a brand new experience for me. So I loved it.
Yeah. I'm glad it was fun.